Hi, welcome to our final event of this year, this academic year. I'm Michael Dumanis, the director of the Cleveland State University Poetry Center, and today we have one of the several fiction readings the Poetry Center has sponsored. It's a particular treat for me because one of the writers just published her novella with Cleveland State. And I actually want to hold it up.
You should. It's lovely.
It's pretty. You should look at it later. It's a novella called Brazil that we ran for a couple of years, a novella series, and this is one of the books that came out this April. So the author of Brazil, Lee Kercheval, will read first. She's the author of CINEMA MUTO, book of prose poems, right?
No,
poems from Southern Illinois University Press, as well as 9 other books of fiction, poetry, and nonfiction, including the Alice stories from the University of Nebraska Press, which won the Prairie Schooner Fiction Book Prize, and Dog Angel, published by the University of Pittsburgh Press. Her novella was selected as a winner of the Ruthanne Wiley Memorial Novella Contest that we've been running by our other reader, Josip Novakovich. Jessie Lee lives in Madison and is the Sally Mead Hands Baskin Professor of English and the director of the Wisconsin Institute for Creative Writing at the University of Wisconsin. She will be followed by Josip Novakovich, the author of a novel, April Fool's Day, and 3 story collections, most recently Infidelities, Stories of War and Lust, 2 collections of narrative essays, and a widely used book on craft, Fiction Writers Workshop. Josip's work has been anthologized in Best American Poetry, the Pushcart Prize Anthology, and O. Henry Prize Stories. He has received the Writing Writers Award, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and 2 NEA Fellowships. Until recently a professor at Penn State University, he now teaches in the writing program at Concordia University in Montreal. Jessie will read, followed by Josip, and then they will both come up and be happy to answer your questions, and then if you want to buy a book, they'll be happy to sign it. Please help me welcome Jessie Lee Kercheval.
Not sure where the water goes here. Over there. Okay. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to have Cleveland State University pick this novella and bring it out with this wonderful cover. Which is a scene from Weeki Wachee, the Spring of the Living Mermaids, great classic tourist attraction in Florida that is featured in the book. And I don't know if you know about novellas, but the main thing about novellas is that authors write them and then they're very, very hard to get published. Novella is a sort of loose definition for something that's too long to be published as a short story and too short to be published as a novel. And so I wrote this one, and I'm very, very fond of it, and now it gets to be in this book, this lovely book. I hope you'll like it too. And I'm going to read from the beginning and then skip ahead a little and read something a little later. So it's self-explanatory. I should say I've never, I read a lot. I give lots and lots of readings. This book just came out, so I actually haven't read from it before. And ordinarily that would not give me any pause at all, being fairly nervous about this stuff. But the speaker is an 18-year-old bellboy from Miami Beach. So I felt like I needed a sock puppet when I was standing up here reading it. So you just have to kind of imagine it's not me, and my voice is, well, maybe not way deeper, but a little deeper. It was July 27th, 1988, my birthday, my 19th birthday, and I was in the bar of one of the Art Deco hotels on the beach when I met her. They were always using this hotel in Miami Vice, although they were careful to take tight shots of the pink front and not show the bums and junkies down the street, not until later in the episode, so it seemed like they were miles away in another Miami. The bar was beautiful, exquisite, that's the word. Black and white and chrome. It was an upscale, laundered money kind of place, and I felt odd there, like I was in a movie, although I don't know which one. I was with this guy, Roberto, that I met at Timmins College when I thought I'd make it out of Miami, had my ticket to the real America. But I'd left Timmins after just 1 semester and gone back to working as a bellboy at the same hotel, the Royal Palms, where my mom and I used to live, where I'd worked in high school, a big 50s, not 30s kind of place, not too far from the Fontainebleau, but not nearly as nice. It was Roberto who went on with pre-law, building his grades, his sights on Harvard Law, while I got moved up from bellboy to parking attendant. That is how I ran into him again. I parked his BMW, and I asked him about Maddie, who used to be my girlfriend before she decided to be Roberto's. He said she was fine, just fine, which was good, because while I was not mad at Roberto, I worried about Maddie. When he heard it was my birthday, he really insisted we go out for a drink. So that's how I happened to be in the bar, which was expensive and not at all the kind of place I usually went, because Roberto took me. Roberto was Cuban, which I'm not, although everyone always says I look it. When I wanted to, I claimed to be Brazilian, because my father is, or was, I hardly remember him, but we share the same last name, Paulo Silvas. Roberto was not only Cuban, he was Batista's grandson or great-nephew or something. In Little Havana, there were people who fully expected him to be president of Cuba someday, or at the very least, the next Republican governor of Florida. That night, as we sat down, some general disguised as a lawyer came up and began to talk the old politics. Even in a place like this, full of Yankee tourists, Roberto couldn't get away from Little Havana. When the white hair started talking, Roberto shrugged. What could he do? So I took the drink he'd bought me and went to sit at the bar, which was made of glass bricks and underlit, so all the people sitting at it looked ghastly or exciting, depending on your mood. She sat next to me. In the mirror, she looked thin and rich, a woman with dark hair and eyes as brown as mine, although hers were raccooned with mascara. She was wearing a black dress so simple it had to be expensive, and silver earrings like needles. Pretty good, but pretty old, in her 40s somewhere, almost as old as my mother. She looked me over in the mirror, too, steadily, as if the mirror was where I really was. I was wearing one of the silk shirts Kirov, the old Jew who owned the Royal Palms, had given me. He lived in one of the oceanside suites, and when you did something for him, nothing illegal, just something nice like bringing him breakfast and a bottle of vitamin C when he knew he'd been drinking too long to remember about eating, he would go to his closet and give you one of his shirts. He had them in all sizes because his weight was always yo-yoing up and down, and they were really beautiful, handmade. On top of Kirov's shirt, I was wearing a Giorgio Armani jacket that Freddie, the bell captain, took out of the room of some Colombian who got shot in Hialeah. Not at all the usual Royal Palms clientele. I felt bad about the jacket for a while. In Brazil, there are probably all kinds of taboos against wearing the clothes of the dead. But Freddie insisted the cops would just take the guy's jacket to wear undercover, something he knew was true because he'd seen it on TV. The woman sitting next to me leaned close to say something. They had the music up loud to make this sort of thing necessary, and I noticed for the first time they were playing Brazil, which had been pretty popular since the movie. Where the songs are passionate, and the smile has flash in it. She kept her eyes on the mirror, but I felt her breath warm on my ear. She said, "I want you to treat me like a war." At first, I didn't understand, and then I realized she had pronounced the W in whore. She had an odd accent, not Cuban, not any kind of Spanish. I looked at her in the mirror again, and she looked back at me, perfectly expressionless. "I don't have any money," I said. She smiled for the first time, showing teeth. I said, "Like, yes?" She touched a fingernail to the collar of my jacket. "Not am." Her nails were painted dark red, but different lengths, like maybe she bit them. "You don't have to pay." "Well," I said, "I am a whore, and you do have to pay." I don't know why I said this. It was a lie, a big lie, and as soon as the words left my mouth, I felt my heart jump. It just seemed like the right sort of thing to say in that bar. The woman took her eyes off the mirror and put them on my flesh for the first time. She shook her head, no. "But I do need a driver," she said. "You can drive?" Now, in my experience, the only place people had chauffeurs, I mean not just rented limos, was on a soap like Dynasty. So I decided she was like Freddie, one of those people who were unable to keep life and TV on different sides of their brains. But it was my birthday, and I had the next day off. "Sure," I said. "Who can't?" Even though I had only learned to drive that year, practicing on cars the guests left in my care at the hotel. When Kirov had offered to move me up from bellboy to parking attendant, I told him I didn't know how to drive, but he just shrugged and said, "This is America. Learn." Which I had, more or less. "My car is outside," the woman said, and stood to leave. I nodded and stood too, and when I did, I noticed we were the same height, 5'9" or so. a height which felt tall on Miami Beach, where the parking meters were taller than a lot of the old people, but felt pretty short when I was walking between classes at Timmins. She headed for the door, but I stood there for a second and looked back at her. I was about to change my mind, sit down again, something a good part of me suspected was the healthy choice. But then I saw that Roberto was watching me, and I couldn't back down. I wanted him to see me leave with a woman, with her. I wanted him to tell Maddie. I went over to the table where he was sitting, opened my mouth to explain. The white-haired man frowned his disapproval. "Go ahead," Roberto said, very smooth, almost winking at me. "Take your aunt home. You wouldn't want her to get into trouble." I felt the woman watching me from the door. I joined her. She took my arm and we went out into the pink lobby. She was shaking her head. "Whore, no," she said. "You are a..." And she made a little shoving motion with her hand. "A pusher, yes?" Her accent was suddenly thick and breathless. She glanced back at Roberto and the old lawyer, imagining God knows what, but certainly not the usual bitter denunciation of Kennedy's treachery at the Bay of Pigs. "Yes?" she said again, her head bobbing. I knew she didn't want an answer, at least not a truthful one. In my experience, most people don't. At Timmins, we had to take this freshman English course where we wrote 2,000-word essays on personal subjects. It was supposed to show that even though we were new to Timmins, someone cared who we were. It was a required course. Our first assignment was Thanksgiving with my family. I'd always eaten Thanksgiving dinner on a TV tray in our suite at the Royal Palms, but I knew enough to know that that wouldn't pass the bar at all. That wouldn't do. Skipped a page. I bought one of those women's magazines with a golden brown roast turkey on the cover, and then I mixed in the food descriptions from that with this Christmas special episode of the Brady Bunch I remembered watching, Holidays in America being pretty much alike. The teacher read a paper from one of the sorority girls out loud first, and I remember being pleased at how much her Thanksgiving was like my Thanksgiving. Turkey, cranberries, the family gathered over inherited china and silver, Dad carving the bird right at the head of the table. Then the teacher read my paper, more turkey, more Dad, except, I guess because I was thinking of Christmas morning with the Brady family, everyone in my family was wearing pajamas at the dinner table. Brand new ones with folds still in them. The teacher commented on it. "America," he'd said, "so much diversity." So we crossed the pink lobby. As we crossed the pink lobby, I thought about telling the woman the truth, that I was not a whore or a player, but a college dropout, a parking attendant at a turquoise-colored, not-so-good hotel. But she put her hand on my lapel, and she said, "You can call me Claudia. What shall I call you?" "Paolo," she said, telling the truth, which she didn't recognize. "Paolo," Claudia said again. Paolo, as if tasting it. I frowned. "Don't worry. It will do," she said. "So, you are not American?" I gave up on being truthful. "Brazil," I said. "I was born in Brazil." "I have lived in America almost 20 years, yes," she said, "but I was born in Hungary." This was before all the changes, before the wall coming down and all, before those things seemed possible in my lifetime or her lifetime or ever. "I was born in Buda," she said. "Budapest?" She shook her head. "Buda," she said, "the other side of the river. That is Pest." "Like Miami and Miami Beach," I said, but she didn't know about that. We stepped out of the hotel, and the hot August night air hit us. A guy behind us said to his friend, "My God, Henry, it's Miami out here." And I knew what he meant. In the bar, the air conditioning had been cold enough to freeze the sweat on your back, and the transition into the real night was a shock. Claudia put her hand around mine, and I noticed both our palms were sweating. We're all humid beings. That was Maddie's joke about it. We went for her car, which turned out to be a new, shiny 1988 black BMW with Palm Beach County plates. BMWs are ugly cars, really, very boxy looking, for all their expense. Their owners are crazy about them, though. I backed one into a concrete piling in the parking garage, and the owner was really pissed. Luckily, the hotel garage has a big sign that says, "It doesn't take responsibility." Claudia gave me her keys, and I opened the passenger door for her. As soon as we were in the car, Claudia got some Coke out of the glove compartment, not a very safe place to keep it, any parking attendant could tell you, and handed it to me. In high school, when I thought I'd be a lawyer someday, have to pass the bar and all, I practiced a lot of self-restraint. I was known for it, really. But since I'd gone to Timmins and come back in one semester, it had been harder to see the point. Still, since I was known for saying no, hardly anyone offered, and I was nervous as Claudia handed me a rolled bill, watched me set up, afraid of not getting it right. Then I did a line, got that chlorine rush like pool water up the nose. Immediately, I felt a lot better, more cheerful. I did another. That night, I could definitely see the appeal. I offered Claudia the last one, but she shook her head. "You're my guest, yes?" she said, the perfect hostess. So I did that one too. After all, it was my birthday. "What now?" I asked, leaning back, pushing against the leather seat. My right foot beat a soundless rhythm on the tight pile of the floor mat, and the left one twitched, ready to go. Still, I couldn't help wondering why Claudia hadn't touched the Coke. Not that I had said no to seconds, but her refusal made me feel a little greedy, like the fat kid at a birthday party going back for cake and ice cream while all the other kids rolled their eyes. What a pig. "I want you to drive," Claudia said. She unrolled the bill and held it up. I saw it was 100, the kind of tip no guest at the Royal Palms ever gave. I should have been having doubts, I know, but by then I was feeling so cheerful I couldn't imagine what they could be. I took the money, looked at my watch. It was a little past midnight. I'd drive her around and catch a bus home. "Drive?" I said. "Yes, ma'am. If nothing else, working at a hotel taught you to be polite." "Where?" She shrugged. "All night." I thought about it a minute. Since we were on the beach, everything further east was ocean. West of Miami Beach was Miami and then the Everglades. South was a dead end at Key West with no ferries to Cuba since Castro. So where? I turned out of the parking lot and crossed the bridge to the mainland, then I headed north for Highway 27. I was following the route the Greyhound bus had taken the only other time I'd left Miami, when I'd gone to Timmins. I tried not to think how that had turned out. Once we were out of Miami, Highway 27 ran between sugarcane fields, flatter than flat. As we headed north, I had the oddest feeling we were climbing, like we were driving straight up the map of North America that had hung on my 5th grade class wall. Claudia turned the AC on high, popped a tape in the Blaupunkt, something African with a lot of drums, and she turned it up until I felt it like a fist in my chest. "To keep you awake, yes?" she said. She reclined her seat a little, closed her eyes. I drove carefully, watching for road signs, afraid I might miss some tricky detour where Highway 27 took a sharp left and the BMW went straight, flipped twice before we ended up dead in the ditch. After a while, I started noticing these signs on the side of the highway. The headlights picked out wooden letters mounted on cypress branches that said things like, "The world's oldest tourist trap," and "Lady, if he won't stop, hit him." I glanced over at Claudia, but her head was tilted back, her eyes closed, her mouth slightly open. 10 minutes or so later, I spotted a low concrete building off to the left. In the front of the building was a larger spotlit sign, Cypress Knee Museum. Who stopped at such places? Is this what people with cars did? People on vacation? People, say, on their way to stay at the Royal Palms? The signs disappeared from my right side of my road, but a few minutes later I saw one lit up by the headlights of the southbound car. Behind, the letters on the dead branches looked like hieroglyphs. And then in the book it says the same thing, "If he won't stop, hit him," but backwards. "This would be better by train, yes?" I jumped. Claudia wasn't asleep at all. "By train?" I said. It sounded like something only a foreigner would say, or a very old person. I've never been on a train. Claudia shook her head. She wrapped her arms around herself as if she were cold, and she made no move to turn down the air conditioning, but which was still pumping away on high. "In Budapest," she said, "they have a special train, a train small enough to be run by children, a train run by a kind of, I don't know what to call them, scouts, yes?" Claudia paused, and I could tell she was looking at me. I nodded to show I was listening, but kept my eyes on the road. I wanted her to know I took my driving seriously. On this train, the children are the engineers and the signalmen, and even the conductors who take the tickets, and they wear special blue uniforms, these train scouts, very neatly pressed. And the conductors even have little leather holsters for their silver ticket punchers. Claudia patted her waist, wearing her imaginary holster a little higher than a good gunslinger would. I waited, but that was it. Claudia's story was over. "Sounds great," I said, imagining Sundays and school holidays, hordes of Hungarian parents taking their children to the special kid train, pretending it was a real treat, but all the while just waiting for the chance to point out the scouts as models, as children full of the terrible impulse to be good, to please the people who really made the trains run. Claudia yawned. Now, the story goes on, and Claudia talks him into going onto a road trip with him first to Weeki Wachee on the cover, and then on to Wisconsin for reasons that become clear as time goes on. And I'm going to read one more section, which, how many people here are actually in a creative writing class right now? Has some stuff just for you. So they've been driving more, taking more drugs. Claudia stopped and bought him some expensive clothes. By 5, my usual dinner break time, we were at Weeki Wachee. I'd been awake 36 hours, maybe driven 400 miles, and had eaten some miniature donuts and part of a Hershey bar. The Coke was still making the tips of my fingers numb, but it wasn't enough. I got out of the car and stood on the hot asphalt, unable to make my feet move, but Claudia was in high spirits. She grabbed my hand and pulled me under the sign that read, "Welcome to Weeki Wachee, Spring of Living Mermaids, a division of PepsiCo." Claudia headed straight for the low cement block building like she knew where she was going. It turned out to be an auditorium, and I got the strangest feeling she had been there before with someone else, though I couldn't guess who. Inside the auditorium, we took a place on one of the cement benches, sat side by side surrounded by middle-aged tourists, all of us facing a long row of mildewed curtains. Claudia was jumpy and sweating like she was really speeding, although I hadn't seen her take any more of her pills. Claudia's been taking amphetamines. The sound system let a long squawk that turned into trumpet fanfare. The curtains peeled back to reveal plate glass windows, and beyond the windows the shadowy blue of an underground spring. The tourists applauded. There was a burst of air bubbles on the other side. Girls wearing fishtails appeared, and their hair floating above them like fans of seaweed. Claudia brought her hands to her mouth in a gesture of astonishment or recognition, I couldn't tell. The mermaids smiled and waved, bubbles trickling from the corners of their mouths. The water in the spring was cold, a cold I could feel right through the glass, and the mermaids' lips looked blue in spite of their waterproof lipstick. We watched as the mermaids drank Pepsi underwater. They smiled and took occasional breaths from the air hoses that dangled above them, bubbling like aquarium filters. The theme of the show was Carnival in Rio, and Claudia squeezed my hand as if she was afraid the sound of the samba might make me cry. And maybe it should have. After all, this was as close as I'd come to Brazil. Then we get to the end of the show. They go out in the lobby. Claudia paid to have a Polaroid of me taken with one of the mermaids, a blonde, freckled girl named Cindy from Destin, who was perched on a stool in the lobby for this purpose. Cindy smelled so much like strawberry shampoo that my mouth watered. Maddie's mother had a condo in Destin, and I was tempted to ask Cindy if she knew Maddie, but I was aware that Claudia was watching me. Claudia held out the Polaroid for me to see, and an old man with a Sony camcorder took my place beside Cindy. I watched as the 2 white blobs darkened into smiling faces, and when I saw mine, I was glad I hadn't said anything to Cindy. She looked wholesome in her green tail and modest bathing suit top, while the circles under my eyes were so deep and dark they looked like anuses, and my brand new earring gleamed. Claudia made him have his ear pierced. Claudia took my hair in both her hands and pulled it back. "You should show off your cheekbones," she said. She borrowed a rubber band from the girl at the ticket counter and fastened my hair in the shortest of ponytails. "Yes?" Claudia asked the girl at the ticket counter. "Hot," the girl said, smiling at me. "Really?" Then we were in the parking lot. "Well," Claudia said, and I knew she was giving me a chance to back out about driving further. She got in on her side of the car and turned on the radio, and I leaned on the hood. She took out her pills, counted out and swallowed her usual 3, then she rolled down the window and held out the bottle to me. I thought about it a minute, then I took 2. 1, it seemed to me, hadn't lasted really long enough. "Can we sleep before we get all the way to Wisconsin?" I said, swallowing the pill. Claudia was putting on lipstick, and I waited for her to finish and answer me. The BMW had a lighted makeup mirror, and she was making a careful job of it. "Yes," she said, finally, pressing a Kleenex to her lips. I got in the car. She smiled, but not yet. The other class I took at Timmins was creative writing. Maddie added it a couple weeks into the term, and she asked me to take it with her. Things were going really great at Timmins between Maddie and me. We'd met the first week. By this time, we were spending almost every night together. Her roommate had her own boyfriend at one of the frats, and we pretty much had Maddie's room to ourselves. Roberto, who I'd met the first day, turned out to be in our dorm too, and he was hanging around a lot, wanting to talk politics, Miami, music. When he heard that I was taking creative writing, he signed up for it too. In class, the teacher explained to us that writing stories developed a different set of writing muscles than the essays we were writing in freshman English. But since my personal essays for that class had pretty much been fiction, I was not sure if that applied to me. Our teacher, though, was very keen on the idea. He was writing a book about it. He started each of these classes by writing a maxim on the board in special fluorescent yellow chalk, like, show, don't tell, and punctuation inside quotation marks, and write what you know, exclamation point, exclamation point. But it was tough. What did we know? We were only freshmen. Maddie decided the two things she knew about were women and New York, which was where her father lived, and she spent the major Jewish holidays. So she wrote a story about all the bag ladies in New York getting together for a secret bag ladies ball on New Year's Eve. It was held on New Year's Eve in a deserted Grand Central Station. There was even a 20-piece orchestra, all made up of former classical musicians, now homeless and crazed, who'd rescued discarded, unloved instruments from other people's trash. Maddie read it out loud, and when she was done, she had tears in her eyes. The teacher went to the blackboard and wrote, "Fantasy is built on facts." "Is Grand Central Station ever empty?" he asked the class. "And if so, would it be likely to be empty on midnight on New Year's Eve?" "When a story is published in the New Yorker," he said, "they have people whose job is to check each and every one of those facts." Roberto was scared after that. He decided he knew there were two things he knew all about: Miami and cockroaches. In Florida, the roaches that run down the sidewalks in front of you at night are half the size of your shoe. Anyway, in Roberta's story, these big cockroaches turned mean. They were pissed off by the way the humans were poisoning the planet or something, and they flew right at the people and they ate their eyes out. People who were driving on I-95 got into gory multiple-car pileups or ran over people who'd wandered blind onto the expressway. After Roberto finished reading his story out loud, the teacher just sat there for a while, his head on one hand, tapping his chalk on the desk with the other. Then he went to the board and wrote, "Horror is everyday life." "When was the last time any of you saw a cockroach?" he asked. The whole class sat staring at him, thinking pretty much the same thing, that he must be from up north, that he must live here in an apartment complex with a really ace organ contract. In Florida, there are roaches living in the trees. One of the girls in the class raised her hand. "In my sorority house," she said, "we have them living in the microwave. And really, it doesn't even bother them, not even when it's on, unless they run right across the middle," and then she froze in mid-gesture. Zap. After all that, what I wrote was an unreal story set in an imaginary Brazil. What other kind of Brazil did I know anything about? In my story, a husband found his wife cutting his brother's hair. In the old days, this was something a wife did for her husband. But the brother wasn't married, and so he'd asked for the haircut to save himself some money. But the husband was the jealous type. He threw the scissors at his brother and yelled, "Get your own wife." The brother laughed, thinking it was a joke, and said, Why when I can share yours?" So the husband paid for the village witch for some special Amazonian poison and turned his brother into a zombie. But the owner of the plantation, where the husband and the brother worked, found out about it, and he was so angry at losing the brother, one of his best workers, that he ordered the husband chained to his zombie brother, who would now work and eat only by imitating a real human. But this made the wife fall in love with the brother, who she had never really noticed before, because when her husband nagged her, the zombie kept quiet. Zombies can't talk, and so seemed to be on her side. After a while, the wife went to the witch and bought an even stronger poison and murdered her husband. But again the plantation owner found out. This time he was even angrier. He ordered the husband's body chained to the wife to teach her a lesson, and she had to drag it around while she worked in the fields. The zombie brother was set free. The wife pleaded with the zombie brother to stay with her, but he was unable to recognize her with her husband chained to her side, or to tell one woman from another. So he followed the first woman he saw around the village, and then he followed another one, and finally he followed a Yankee tourist right out of the story, leaving the wife alone with her husband, who, since he was dead, didn't nag her anymore. This story seemed to leave the teacher pretty much speechless. He didn't even have something to write on the board. It wasn't until after class he came up to me, my story in his hand, and he said, "I have a friend at Chapel Hill who's doing an anthology of South American fiction," he said. "Magical realism. Do you mind if I send him a copy?" But that wasn't the strangest thing that happened. About a week after I wrote my story, but before I read it in class, I walked in on Maddie cutting Roberto's hair, something she'd never so much as offered to do for me. He'd gotten a really bad haircut somewhere, she explained, and she was trying to fix it. But it didn't look to me like she was helping much. There was a towel draped around Roberto's bare shoulders, and there was hair everywhere, on the towel, the carpet, on Maddie's t-shirt. They were laughing like crazy, like they were in on some really big joke. "Oh man," Roberto said, "what did I ever do to deserve a haircut this bad?" "What would you think if you walked in and found some woman cutting your husband's hair?" I asked Claudia. She was sorting the money in her purse, smoothing the bills into stacks without regard to denomination. "I'd assume he was paying her." "Not that they were sleeping together?" "Either way," Claudia shrugged. "I'd assume he was paying her." Thank you.
Yeah, I'll borrow a book here. I was tempted to read from a story in progress or a novel in progress to experiment on you, to see when you get bored, so that I would know how to revise the story and make it better. And you know, one lousy evening would be worth one good story, you know. But you know, I'm a nice guy. I decided not to sacrifice you and to torture you like that. Know that they won't give you a chance to get bored, but at least this one has gone through the reading, and it's set in Ohio, and it's southern Ohio. Well, whatever. You'll see what it is. It's Night Guests is the title. A loud knocking. I stumbled out of bed and to the door. I lived in Wayne National Forest in Ohio, near a little traveled road, with the nearest neighbor half a mile away, and I should have had the policy of not answering the door or of having a gun handy, but that was the risk I usually took, to answer the door, with no bad consequences except a lot of boring conversations with the Mormons, who of course visited only during the day in the most beautiful heavenly weather. But now it was terribly dark. The silhouettes in the door I thought looked familiar. It was probably Mimi and John, my former house sitters, who might have needed something. My dog didn't bark, but sniffed their crotches. Maybe they had been somewhere interesting. They were giggling. I opened the door, and a splash of cold air and the images of complete strangers, two women, one tall and long-haired and the other chubby and short-haired, woke me up enough to realize that I was not entirely decent. I was not entirely indecent either, so I didn't apologize or shut the door as I stood in my cotton underwear. At least it was American underwear, which was pretty big, certainly not meant to please the eye, but to cover the skin. I had just got back from Italy, from a research trip, where I could buy only tiny Italian underwear at the shopping mall, or tongs, suitable for carnivals and gigolos. I used to wear that kind of underwear as a child, growing up in Italy, but as a grad student in the States, I first made do with what I could find at the shops, and then I got used to it, actually liked it. Now I was still aware of my underwear, as the tall woman spoke in a beseeching tone. "Could you help us? We just drove off the road into the ditch." She straightened with her hand her curly, fluffy, light brown hair. She had a thin, straight nose, full lips, and a shine in her eyes. She looked happy, even though she was clearly in trouble. "I wish I had a truck to pull you out," I said. "Could we come in and use your phone?" "No problem," I said, and led them into the living room with a large red Persian carpet that felt good under my bare feet. I went to the bedroom and pulled on my jeans and came out. The tall woman dialed 3 times while I put a log in the stove and stirred the embers, admiring how they still had plenty of body aglow. The flames licked the log almost instantly, and with satisfaction I closed the door. "I can't get through," the tall one said. "Try again later. How would you like a cup of coffee?" "I'd love it. By the way, my name is Marietta. I ground some Italian espresso beans, illy, and dripped a strong brew which, with a bit of Swiss chocolate, wafted an intoxicating, wakeful aroma of pleasure to which hardly any caffeine addict could remain indifferent. "How did you get into the ditch?" I asked. "We was driving around and out of nowhere. You know, I'll try to do the Appalachian accent, you know. You can just imagine that is an Appalachian accent. We was driving around, and out of nowhere, this fucking big deer jumps on the road. I swerved and ended up in your ditch. That seems a good choice. Better ditch than deer. How's your car? Just a little banged. I didn't tell them that just the other day I had hit a big deer with majestic antlers. Okay, I'll skip that part. Even though it's a majestic paragraph, but so anyhow, Marietta's right headlight, it was out by a different method, yet the same cause, trying to duck a deer. I asked, were you driving back from a party? Were you drunk? Excuse me for asking. Oh no, said the other woman. We wasn't drunk. We had only 4 or 5 beers each. That would do it for me. No party? No. We was looking for my aunt, said Marietta. I kind of remembered where she lived, but we got lost and kept driving along these back roads, and we couldn't figure out how to get out of the maze. It took you till 4 in the morning to reach this point? When did you start? If you get lost, how long can you stand to be lost? Suppose they were looking for the ant at 10, sort of the last decent hour to start looking for ants. 6 hours of wandering? Doesn't sound right. Anyway, who cares? And they talked more. We stopped by to get some cigarettes. Shelley, what else did we do? By now I had the coffee ready, and I proudly presented it to Shelley and Marietta. Jesus, what fine coffee. That tastes great. Shelley said all that, but I didn't see her taste the coffee. And she laid the cup down next to the rocking chair on which she was sitting. Thank you, I said. Why don't you try that number again? All right, said Marietta, and Shelley said, do you mind if I go to the car and get some cigs and beer? I minded, but said, no, I don't. Who are you trying to call? I turned to Marietta. My ex? That's a good ex if you can call him at 4 in the morning. Yeah, he's good at some things, but he's a real jerk. I don't like him. I'm glad that we're getting a divorce. You still married? I wondered to myself, why should I need to know that? Just on paper, we are separated. I hope never to see him again. But now you want to see him. Yes, now. I wish I knew more people I could call, but that shows you the problem. He didn't want me to meet any people. Jerk. Shelley was back with her dangling 6-pack, or rather 4-pack by now, Bud Light. My stomach turned at imagining the pale, insipid taste. Nothing bodied like Urquell or Trappist ale. But that was a snobbish attitude, and momentarily ashamed of being a snob, I didn't mind when I heard the beer pop. Actually enjoyed the whiff of the cool and breezy yeast foam. Shelley said, yes, he's a real jerk. I mean, what can you expect? Her husband's a damn cop. So it's a real husband? Real cop, said Shelley. Real asshole. I can't get through, Marietta said. What area code is his number? I asked. 740. We are in 614. Shit, I thought it was a local. No wonder I couldn't get through. I'll call collect. Don't bother, just dial. I'd hate to get you stuck with a bill. You're already doing so much for us. Soon she said, it's me. Her voice was shouting in the phone on the other end. Who? Me. Gee, don't pretend you don't know me. At 4 a.m., I don't know nobody. Where are you? The guy's voice carried even through the receiver. I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You've been drinking. No, we slid off the road in a ditch and can't get out. Can you come over and get us out? Calm down, Marietta. Where are you now? I don't know, I told you. I saw it was time to intercede, and I said, give me the phone, and I'll give him the directions. And so I did. I listed all the turns, about 3 or 4, and answered a couple of questions. Yes, their car's in a ditch. They aren't drinking. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Can I speak to Marietta? As much as you like. He shouted, I love you too, lilted Marietta, and hung up. That sounded odd to me. She had just said what a jerk he was and how she hated him, and now into the phone, he said he loved her, and she said she loved him. Was that like saying, see you later, good night, just a greeting? I didn't ask her to explain, but something here was not truth. Maybe she did love him, but liked complaining about him on the road. All that divorce and hate rap was valve talk. Shelley wanted to open another beer. No, I said. No way. I don't want to be bossy, but it seems you have had enough. Drink coffee instead, especially if you're bringing in a cup. You're right, said Shelley. That's okay with me. She took the beer and poured it in my sink. I love your coffee, said Marietta. Have more then. Now that seemed a better use of the word love to my ears. I poured her more with a bit of milk and she sipped, tossing her hair over her shoulders. Nothing could stop her from having a good time, not even car accidents. That was impressive. She stood up to go to the bathroom and I saw she had a graceful figure. She moved lightly, sinuously. A strange creature, untouched by poverty, bad circumstance, bad marriage, car accident. She was clearly wonderful. When she had gone to the bathroom, I was facing Shelley, who burped and clearly was not wonderful. What do you do? Asked Shelley and burped again. I'm a college professor, European history. Renaissance crime is my specialty. Sorry. Sorry for what? Now and then I'm sorry to teach European history. That we are bothering you. You aren't bothering me. You're in need and I'm glad to help. We thought when we saw that big tobacco barn, a farmer lived here, so we didn't feel shy about asking for help. If it known, come on, if it known, here you are, a gentleman, European, and you have to deal with us hicks. Don't give me that. I opened the door in my underwear. That ought to have relaxed you. Well, no, a farmer would never open the door in his underwear, so we knew at once you was a gentleman. She had a sense of humor, did she? She didn't laugh, but seemed doleful. Did she mean that? Were we communicating? Maybe she was wonderful too, with hidden treasures of the mind. How can you live here and teach at a university? Is there a university around? No, I drive to Columbus during the week and stay here on weekends. I regretted I had told her. Suppose she had friends who were thieves. They would know how to get to my place and rob it during the week. So I added, during the week I have a house sitter. He likes it here. Oh, she said, you have another house? Yes, nothing spectacular, not even as nice as this cabin. I come here to get my reading and writing done and to stay away from students, bars and restaurants. 2 houses, eyes filled with alarm and envy. She hated me at that moment. Hell, I thought. I better say nothing about myself. Maybe they should say nothing about themselves. Knowledge is harm. By the way, you know, my eyes kind of blinking, and that's from too much knowledge. It's, from too much beer, I think. Anyway, where do you work? I contradicted my conclusion and asked her from inertia of the conversation. I couldn't say anything safely in the affirmative, so questions seemed to the best way. Yes, I work, she said. Where? Marietta and I build dog houses. We nail them all day long. You want to feel my muscle? No, thank you. We have fun at work, said Marietta. She's a hoot. Do you want to feel my muscle? She lifted her arm and tightened it, and her flannel shirt slid, and I could see a gentle slope of her small and shapely tits. Did she wear a bra? Maybe not. Couldn't see it, and the slope went on, shedding light into precipitous darkness in her shirt. The breasts looked larger now than they had let on. No, thank you. I believe that you have good muscles. I would have enjoyed feeling the proffered muscle, even the biceps, but I had already committed to not feeling muscles by saying no to Shelley. It wouldn't be consistent now to say yes to Marietta. It would hurt Shelley, or maybe it wouldn't. I had my hang-ups of being considerate, or more accurately, of wanting to appear considerate. Marietta smiled with a shine on her lips and looked at the stove. Nice how you can see the flames inside. For a second I thought that maybe the two worked as hookers. And this was a strange trick. But no, ditching a car would be a hard way to earn a living. On the other hand, how did I know they had ditched the car? I hadn't gone out to see it. But then, why would they call a policeman? No, they can't be hookers. Plus, Marietta seemed too airy, untouched for that. No, how could I think that? That was dirty and insulting of me. Good thing they can't read thoughts. But then, why was I sure they did call a policeman rather than a thief? Maybe they aren't hookers but thieves, with complex schemes which work, of course. They could speak a code. I love you too could mean he doesn't have a gun. Come here and clobber him. But she looks too nice for that, too innocent even. Would you like a doghouse for your dog? Asked Shelley. We'll get you a 40% discount. So, where does your husband live? She sat back in the armchair. On top of the hill before you turn to 248, there is a white trailer with many pots of flowers in the window. You're welcome to stop by. To see him? Well, no. There's another trailer, a pink one, and that's mine, way back in the yard. You think I could just drive in and talk to you all? Your trailer doesn't have the flowers? No, I have cats. They're always sunbathing in the windows. Why wouldn't you stop by? If you usually don't even talk to each other? Oh, we do. I just hope we won't. We have a kid to take care of, so that keeps us pretty close, better than dropping kids off 50 miles away, as some people I know do. I'll need a better car before I get a divorce. Who's taking care of the kid now? The aunt. Not the one we was looking for, another one. Just 200 feet past our place. Blessed are the ants, I said. The phone rang. The cop wanted the directions to be repeated. I found the chains, he said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Is she all right, sir? Not passing out? Far from passing out, Marietta was buzzed on coffee, and since she kept repeating how much she liked it, I made her cappuccino. You better watch out, she liked. I may get addicted to this stuff, and I don't know anybody else who can make it. Soon the lights showed up in the yard. It seemed less than 10 minutes. Why did he say 20? I walked out and welcomed the bony man with the crew cut and the mustache who jumped out of a red pickup. Where are they? He asked. Inside. Are they all right? Are they hurt? Yes, they're all right, just silly. He walked in with a big flashlight in one hand. Are you all right? Yeah, we are fine, said Marietta. You didn't bang the dashboard or anything like that? No, we just knocked our heads together. Doesn't hurt. He walked to Marietta and said, look at me. She did, and he shone the light straight into her eyes and peered. Man, you'll make me go blind. Cut it out. I got to look again, he said. Do her first. I'll take a break, she said. Now we gotta finish this. This is serious. What did I tell you? Said Shelley. I understood she meant, what a pain in the ass this jerk is. As though he understood that too, he pounced and poured light into Shelley's eyes. He held the flashlight in the clenched fist above his ear in a trained manner which would allow the flashlight to become a billy club in a second if need be. I guess you're conscious, he said. That shouldn't take that much guessing, said Shelley. You've been drinking. How much have you had? Oh, nothing, just 2-3 beers. That's too much, Marietta. You shouldn't have let Shelley drive. But I don't have a driver's license, said Shelley. Don't matter. If you drink, you shouldn't drive. Let Shelley do it. But I drank more, said Shelley. I think Marietta had only 1 beer. Oh, did you? For a second, the cop lost his staccato pursuit stance. Never mind, Marietta. You still shouldn't have drove. You're an awful driver. I'm not that bad. So tell me, what happened? I was laughing so hard, tears came into my eyes, Marietta said. Jokes, we know some good ones. Want to hear them? No, keep going with your story. Tears made it hard to see. This big deer jerk just leaped out of nowhere, and I swerved. That was stupid. Don't you know you must brake and keep your direction? But then I would have hit him. Probably not, if he'd started soon enough. I didn't start soon enough. Plus he just jumped out of the total darkness. You shouldn't have drove for the ditch. It wasn't a highway. I couldn't change my direction. What's so bad about a ditch? You wrecked the car. She did fine, I said. Hitting a buck head-on would cause more damage. Don't defend her, sir. She should learn once and for all. You see a deer, you brake and keep going straight. This struck me as insane. She did fine, better than I did, or than he would. He probably would have ended up in the hospital if stuck to his idiotic rule. Where did he pick these rules? Do cop manuals print nonsense like that? If you wasn't my wife, I'd revoke your license. Still might, he said. Have they been drinking here, sir? Hardly. I gave them coffee. You'd like some? He walked to the sink and grabbed 2 cans of light. You drink this, sir? No. I didn't think so. They brought in the cans already empty, I said. I didn't know why I lied. He frowned. Would you like a cup of coffee? A cup for a cup. No, thank you. I'm going to pull out the car. I'll be back. Please, sir, don't let them drink. When he walked out, I see what you mean, I said to Marietta, but he's helping you. I know, it just doesn't feel like it. I had to agree, and we sat in silence. Pretty soon the cop was back with the red car in tow. He shone his light over the damaged area. That's at least $250 worth of damage right there, he said. Maybe 300. I was impressed. He was right with his estimate. Where are you gonna get that? He asked her. Insurance? Marietta said cheerfully. No, not with the drunken driving. Plus, the rate would jump up. You gotta come up with the money. How? You figure it out. That's your problem. Maybe this is the pimp moment, I thought. Now she'll be forced to moonlight and they'll offer the services to me. Maybe he's the one who designed the whole thing. I chuckled. The cop looked at me strangely. Not the right moment to chuckle. Where's the assembly part, he asked. It fell out somewheres. Oh, that black thing. I saw it fall out. I'll find it, said Shelley. They looked in the ditch, shining to and fro, and found nothing. And they came back and sat in the car. Marietta sat with her hands together, clasped between her knees, as though she was chilled. Shelley, you drive my pickup. You sure? She said, but climbed in it anyway. The cop sat with Marietta and said before closing the door, thank you, sir, for your help. Oh, nothing to thank. Marietta lifted one of her hands and waved to me briefly and looked away at the barn. That seemed an indifferent greeting after our conversation. She had seemed much friendlier before, but now she just waved me off like a fly. She doesn't need me. I'm just a middle-aged guy with a tobacco barn in which there is no tobacco but only firewood and mountain bikes. It was 5 in the morning now. Should I go to bed? No, it wouldn't work after all that coffee. I made more and thought, they were sweet, except the cop, of course, but he must be a good guy despite being a bore. Will I ever see Marietta again? They told me where they worked. Should I stop by and see them at work? No, that would be silly. Should I stop by their trailers? No, even if they are separated, somehow that wouldn't be decent. To come by to visit her and to visit him, that would not make any sense at all. Maybe I'll run into her at Kroger's, and if she's divorced, oh, forget it. I told myself, and gave myself sound advice. Don't be an ass. I was glad that I had helped them despite the policy of not opening doors to strangers at night. The following morning I saw a cop's car and the same cop walk up and down the road looking into the ditch. I drove past, rolled down the window and said, missing something? Yes, the assembly part. Good luck, I said. Thank you, he said, and continued walking back and forth by the barn. It would have been more pleasant if Marietta had come by to do it, or at least if she had come with him. Now I had a cop snooping around. Well, that's all right. It could be worse, I thought. And of course it could be. Now and then I remembered Marietta and thought how wonderful it would be if I could kayak with her or hike in the woods, or simply drink wine and talk. I was sure she was much smarter than she let on. It would be great to hear her jokes. Each time I began to daydream, I remembered myself. It was pointless. A month later, however, the cop stopped by just as I was doing my email. Though stop by may not be the right expression. I thought I heard a car, perhaps the mailman, but the days in which I had expected something good in the mail had been long gone, so I kept going through my hotmail, when suddenly the door banged open and the cop with a gun in his hand shouts, "Freeze!" It looked so ridiculous, a poor cop show imitation, that I didn't get scared. "Where is she?" he shouted. "Who?" "Don't play dumb, my wife." "How would I know?" "You know very well, don't play games with me." I never saw her after that night. "Sir, you have been calling my wife." "Why?" "No, don't lie. Are you having an affair with my wife?" "No, far be it from me. I'm glad I helped you all, but what did I do to deserve this?" His hand was shaking. That made me nervous and soon terrified. This guy could just pull the trigger. I looked up the barrel, then to his eyes. There was rage, tears, a total madman driven by jealousy. "Hey, please calm down," I said. "I had nothing to do with your wife. Haven't seen her again." "Oh, but you may have seen her before, right? I mean, what would she be doing at 4 in the morning on this road?" "I don't buy the story she was visiting her aunt. She don't have no aunt anyways." "I didn't buy that story either, but who knows where she was driving to or from. She was visiting you." "Come on. Her car hit the ditch before my place. She was driving in this direction." "True," he said, "true, but maybe she was just..." "Don't speculate. That was the only time I saw her." "Honestly?" "Why would I lie?" "Because of the gun?" "You get a point, I must admit. Admit what? You saw my wife?" "No, the point that the gun would scare one into saying all sorts of things." "Please remove it if you want me to talk normally. Would you like some coffee?" "Oh, I've heard about your coffee. I hate this liquor coffee." "No, thank you. I have some Folgers somewhere, if that would make you feel better." "No," he put the gun into the leather at his belt. "Have a seat," I said. "Okay," he said angrily. I was already seated. "Sure you don't want tea?" "No, thank you." He remained standing, which gave him an unfair advantage, but it would be awkward to stand up now, with his large black rubber shoes at my toes. Once I stood up from my rocking chair, I'd bump into him, and that didn't seem comfortable. The last thing I wanted now was to imitate the postures of two tomcats, one standing and the other cowering, but that was our geography now. I would have to stand up, or this guy should learn to relax. But how can he relax when he's filled with Marietta jealousy? "You've been calling my wife," admitted. "No." "Sir, I have the evidence. There's a collect call made from the phone to mine, and when I am at work at night, that's her phone. I never call collect. I have a good calling plan with AT&T. What would be the point? I'm not that poor." "You sure?" He looked around and his gaze fixed on the computer. I guess you're right, but that still don't explain it all. And then there's a call from my number to yours, also at night. And I work night shifts. I don't remember her calling me at night." "Aha, but you do remember her calling you." He stood on tiptoe, gaining in size. "No, I didn't put that right. She never called here night or day." "How can you say that, sir?" "I have the evidence, the phone bill." "What's the date?" For a second it occurred to me that my house sitter may have called her.